The original Strangers, when it came out, was shocking and new, and like nobody had ever seen that before. In our chapter 1, we call it a reboot, but it was more or less a remake of the original Strangers, and that's because we felt like we should bring that to a new audience. We loved the movie that we made, but that was just the stepping off point. We wanted to tell the story of what happens next.
Movie 1, you know exactly where you're supposed to go. In movie 2, we were in the Wild West. We were making our own original film. In movie 3, the same, but we shot them all at one time with a very limited amount of days. We knew if we were successful in movie 1, which we were, we would want to go back and enhance movie 2 and 3 with our enhancement shoots, because the arc is going to naturally change and evolve as you're editing.
We looked at the whole thing and said to ourselves, we need to go deeper and satisfy the fans, give them hopefully an experience where they go, okay, I understand why they did chapter 1, but I really had a good time in chapter 2 and chapter 3.
Scarecrow leaves, and now we come back with the goodbye to Ryan at the end of it.
Yeah.
We spent hours really working on the emotional arc of the character. We figured out there's something so much more here that we could create.
Movie number 2 starts with her waking up in the hospital. There's a nurse, Danica, who she feels like she can trust, but then she's not sure because masked people show up at the hospital and attack her. And where was the nurse when this happened? You know, she kind of is the same height and sort of mannerisms as one of the women behind the mask.
She realizes she's on her own, and now she's on the run. The second movie becomes this epic journey of survival. Somehow she has to figure out how she's gonna stay alive while she's being mercilessly hunted down. And slowly she starts changing, and she starts doing things that she couldn't ever have believed.
You're watching a person change in chapter 2 from this ordinary person to a survivalist.
If it actually happened and you were still stuck there and they were still chasing you, you know, what exactly would you do to survive and how far would you go?
You almost died. Maybe your memory's just a little bit fogged up.
You're stepping into her mental state, what it would feel like to go through these events. So my job was to really navigate my character's emotional journey every day. And I think I had a notebook of notes, maybe thicker than the script. And I also had a murder board, is what I called it, of the timeline of Maya. It was important for it to feel authentic and organic. So as long as I had spent enough time while we were doing pre-production, understanding at a cellular level who this person was at every step of the process, once I had that within me, I'd stop thinking about everything and live in the moment, and it really pushed my artistic abilities.
One of my favorite sequences is this SUV that Maya ends up in, and she thinks she's going for safety and help, and then her paranoia starts taking over.
Look, Maya, I'm really worried about your stitches. If your wound opens up, you could lose a lot of blood.
She's afraid, but it turns out it's Danica, the nurse. They're seemingly really nice and concerned about her, except they say little things that start to make her question.
I'll take you back to our house, okay? It's safe.
Renny Harlin had this idea to play that car ride from Maya's point of view.
It just gets scarier and scarier and scarier until everything in the car is scary. The view out the window, the rain that is pounding on the roof, and the fact that the doors are locked. I just want to make this pressure cooker scene.
Open the door! Open it! Let me out! Relax! Calm down.
In this SUV, the tension was so high. It's such a small space. And so creating it was kind of weirdly liberating because I was forced to really go there.
Maya, meet our idiot roommates.
It's like, I don't want to breathe and I don't want to touch him because it's like I've never been this close to him before in my life. It created this really alive chemistry and relationship between the two of us that's so palpable on screen.
So you're the one everybody's talking about?
You also see the beginning of her mental fractures, like what is real and what is not. I'm losing my mind a little bit when you see the flash of Scarecrow.
And then the paranoia rises and that preacher is talking on the radio. She's looking in the front, she's seeing, oh my God, she's doll-faced.
That scene is the first time where you feel like she is an animal that needs to be out of this cage. And it's the first time where she really takes a risk. It's intense survival instincts. That animalistic instinct that she has, and her gut says, jump the fuck out of that car, so she does.
What the? Maya!
Maya gets to a point where she's essentially lost in the woods. No cell phone, no compass, no idea where she is. She maybe took 1 or 2 camping trips in her life, maybe, but that's about it. So the wilderness of Oregon really isn't her familiar zone.
But also she's injured, and we have this long scene where she has to sew up her own wound that she suffered in the first movie, and now she's aggravated by being out in the elements.
Do you have the guts, literally, to take this needle and actually sew yourself up with no anesthetic, no painkiller, no nothing? Because that's the only way you'll survive.
She is finding her will to live and watching her question, like, would death be better than what I'm dealing with right now?
Take 2, A mark.
B mark visual.
We did 3 11.5-minute takes. I've never lived in a take that long before where there's no dialogue. We had this incredibly talented prosthetics team who built that wound and was pumping blood through it while I was shooting. Do you want me to show it to camera more?
Yes.
It was a really intimidating scene to go into it, but something happens when the cameras start rolling where I just kind of like my mind goes blank and it just kind of happened. That's what's so great about working with Courtney is being able to like exist in the character's body and take the time that it would take to live in that.
When we first edited the scene, it was, if I remember, like about 4.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's grueling to watch. I mean, it's really grueling. So we actually ended editing it down to, I think, about just under 2 minutes, which is still extremely, rough to watch. You haven't seen a scene like that in a movie before.
So you look out, no bore, no bow, no bore, your knife by the fire. In the second movie, we are in the forest, and I love wilderness, but I wanted to turn nature, instead of a safe place of hiding, I wanted to turn it into the most threatening place where anything could go wrong, and behind every tree there could be something scary.
Maya gets out to the wilderness, and just when she thinks, okay, I have escaped these human masked attackers, she faces a wild boar. And it's like, oh, come on, right?
The wild boar scene was bigger and bigger as the new scripts were coming, and I was very excited to shoot that. This was like a big CGI scene, it was very challenging.
So it's coming through that seat where Bogdan's sitting.
Yeah, that entire seat explodes toward us.
You would normally get 3 days to shoot a sequence like that, and you would shoot it probably in a green screen stage. But because we had to be a bit more resourceful, we actually did it in the real environment, in the woods.
3, 2, 1, action.
We had to build the scene in post, so you don't have the boar there, you have to imagine that the boar is there.
The co-actor she was performing with, who was wearing a sort of black suit, became the boar.
I've never shot anything before with a creature actor, pushing me around and dragging me.
We tried to make it as physical as possible, but it was great because we also did a lot of handheld work with her.
I would bang my head on the log and I'd be like, oh my God. So it was really challenging physically.
Cut. Beautiful. Matt, are you okay? Yep. Fantastic take.
And there was an amazing team of artists that, over 9 months of meticulous work, just piece by piece, put that boar together.
That shot where I'm down on the ground and his snout just comes into frame and you see it twitching and you see his hair moving.
I was insistent that that shot had to be in the movie. You could feel the saliva and the hair moving, and it was just like terrifying.
It's an important scene for Maya because it's her first intentional kill, and she lets all of her rage out on this thing. There's a piece of liberation in that she can actually protect herself. There's also a lot of guilt and fear about the loss of the old version of herself. And that, to me, is the birth of the new Maya.
The trilogy is a little bit of a cross between the horror genre and a thriller because there's a mystery baked into it. Who are these strangers? And so there's not just a will she survive, there's also a who's doing it, why.
The opening sequence at the beginning, we give you who Pinup Girl is before the movie even starts.
Is Tom right here?
So We're not trying to hide anything from you. Now you're gonna have to backtrack and find out why we're showing you and how we're gonna get you there, because that's more important.
I think everybody has the question, who is Tamara? Because in the original movie and also in our first movie, these strangers show up at their doorstep and they just ask,
Is Tamara here?
was that the first time it happened, or is there a history behind it with these characters? It's never explained in the original movie, but we wanted to dive into the past and ultimately tell the audience, how did it all start?
And then you get a flashback to the strangers. As children, we show you what made them what they are. And you come to understand that they first killed together.
Is Tamara here?
And they were literally in love from that moment, as a sort of version of Mickey and Mallory, of natural-born killers, if you will. It's morbid and weird, but there is a fascination with serial killers and what makes them do what we all consider as normal people, things that we perceive we could never do. And the scariest thing about this is that these are real people, and there are other people like them all over the world. During the course of these movies, you'll see Pinup Girl as a young child and as the grown-up version. I mean, I really love the performance Emma put in as Pinup Girl.
I auditioned for Maya at first. I sent a tape, and then I didn't hear anything for a while, and so I was like, okay, I guess I didn't get it. And then I got a phone call from my manager saying, we have an offer for Pinup Girl. So it was like, I didn't even read for Pinup Girl. It was like, how can they be sure that I'm right for this? My agent said, you know, Emma, there's something eerie about you. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And in this case, it will work for this. Shelley is head waitress. She's in charge of lots of people. She's the most mature person in the diner. And then when she's in her killer persona, she wears a baby dress and she's got these big chunky child shoes. And then what Courtney and the writers wrote in the script is that she giggles like a child. And it is this very interesting thing. You know, in her real life, she's in charge, and when she's killing, she's a child. Oh, it needs to be fast.
Yeah, because you're walking in warming and you're about to fight again.
I think we had 2 weeks just with the mask on. And there's something about putting the mask on that kind of protects you in a way. There's something freeing about that.
Move.
We were in the woods in the original movie. There's this scene where Froy pops out and puts a gun to my head. And you know, my character's not even scared, you know. She doesn't have a human response, which is also terrifying. And she sort of dances in front of him, and she grabs the gun and screams. And it's like she's enjoying the danger of it.
With your back still toward Brian, you lift it elegantly up.
And it took us a while to find it, because the first time we did it, I think I was still kind of moving slowly, kind of in the original, and then everyone was like, what if we tried something a little different? This is a different movie. Rennie was sort of like, no, let's make these people crazy.
Hear me out, psycho bitch.
Yeah, that was nice. I had a sort of permission that day to go insane.
She created a playfulness and just the sort of way she dangles her knife around, that whole whimsicalness that she added to it just makes the nature of somebody like that even scarier, because they just don't care.
Why are you doing this to us? Because you're here.
Nothing scares someone more than someone who doesn't value what you value. We're constantly trying to make something moral and make moral arguments about things, and to have someone be completely amoral and not hate you, like, I don't feel anything, I just want to kill you. I think that really terrifies people.
In movie 2, they're relentless at coming back and what I call finishing the job, right? She's the only one that survived. And it's sort of like you took away my perfect winning streak. That Scarecrow's also fascinated with her. That's why he comes into that room in the house.
Pretty lucky.
Am I?
Yeah, you're the only one that survived.
In that bedroom scene, the idea is to have Maya's POV of flashing to him, to seeing him with the mask on and realizing, wait, those are the same hands that stabbed me, those are the same hands that took that tear off of my cheek. You're realizing with Maya, this is the person who tried to kill me.
You were stabbed in the stomach, right? Did you think you were gonna die?
She's like, this person is so fucked up that not only did they do this to me and continue trying to do this to me, they've now walked into this space to basically interview me about what it felt like. They're that psychologically tormented.
How many others?
Does it matter? I think with Gregory, being around anybody with that level of conviction, I think is a little intoxicating.
When she's sitting in that chair in movie 1, and he's about to stab her, and she says, you just see it. He stops, literally. It's like, who would say this in this situation, right? She didn't just scream and cry and beg for her life. That's where she really piqued his interest.
I'm thinking a Scarecrow backflips off the hood. What do you think?
Originally, I met with Courtney for Ryan, and then I think after talking to him, he was like, this guy's nuts, so he suggested Gregory.
There's just an energy about Gabe, especially with him in Scarecrow mode. There's a real presence there.
While we were shooting, he made it so that the tension was always there in a way that was really palpable for when we were on screen.
We're out of the woods. Congratulations.
It was really funny to like get to know him now because we worked together for 4 months and we were so removed from each other, and that was very helpful.
The way I approached it is like every time I'm looking at her and I'm Scarecrow, it's just like a cool control game that I'm playing of like, I know you're not getting away, but if I do this, what happens? And if I do this, what happens? And it's like, oh, nice.
There's a huge attack by the strangers at another house where she thought that she felt safe. So at the end of movie 2, now Maya is on the run.
The very end of movie 2, she has killed Pinup Girl. And she didn't really intend that she would die, but there's no remorse for it. That's the woman that killed Ryan. But then Scarecrow shows up, and you see how he takes off the mask and how he cradles her, and Maya's hidden off to the side. And that last moment, she now has a different understanding, because the one thing she didn't know until that moment was exactly what his relationship was and how deep it was with Pinup Girl. That's the first time there's something human about these people. She knows the guy under the mask. She's met him. She's been stuck in a room with him. There's a weird dynamic that's starting to form there and more of an understanding.
When I watch movie 2 in a big room, I walk away being like, that was fucking dope. That was badass.
Each one does leave you on cliffhanger. So we hope that people are gonna have like a fun conversation. Well, what's gonna happen? Where's this gonna go?
When you watch 2, you gotta see 3, because it answers questions and there's a whole other slew of events that you never would have expected.